Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Vinny Magalhaes to defeat Ryan Bader. And I am here to break down UFC Fight Night 252. I looked it up. Cejudo versus Song. Or is it Song versus Cejudo? I gotta look that up. Okay, opening up the card, we have Rafael Cerqueira taking on Modestas Bukauskas. My prediction here is Bukauskas wins, and I'll go with him winning by round 3 TKO. Why? I don't know. All right. The basis for the prediction is that he's just earned my trust more. I have a lot more faith in Bukauskas than I do Cerqueira. Cerqueira, he's been fighting at a high level for about a minute, and it didn't go his way that 1 minute. That was his UFC debut where he suffered his only loss to Ibo Aslan by getting TKO'd. And even though I'm picking Bukauskas to win by TKO, that's not the fight I envision. Bukauskas is a big, strong guy, but he does not have the physicality of Ibo Aslan. And I also think he's a much cleaner, slicker fighter, Bukauskas. Did I just call him slick? I don't know. But yeah, I do think Bukauskas will be able to tame Cerqueira. I think he's expecting a dangerous guy coming at him. And of course, Bukauskas has been knocked out a few times, which gives me a little bit of doubt. But I think he's also really, really good. He has really good movement. I think he's good on the back foot, Bukauskas. I think he'll find ways to slow this fight down. He's also pretty damn strong, too, if they tie up. And I also think down the stretch, he's going to be the better technician. He's just been there and done that way more. Cerqueira, he's been down the stretch and he's won down the stretch a few times, but not enough and not at a high enough level for me to trust him there. I think if anybody's fallen apart after a tough round, it's going to be Cerqueira. And Bukauskas, not that he's Mr. Accelerator or whatever, but he's been able to win 15-minute fights in the UFC and got a nice finish in round 3 against Marcin Prachnio in his last fight with an arm triangle choke. As for the submissions, I don't think they're going to play too big of a role here, but they can sneak up on you, obviously, like in his last fight against Prachnio. But I have to say, even though his record wouldn't show it, Cerqueira is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. At least I've heard him say that. So there's more than meets the eye grappling-wise with Cerqueira. But in general, I just think this one is going to be a fight that's settled on the feet. I think Cerqueira is much more of a striker as a fighter, no matter how good he is on the ground or claims to be or whatever. Sometimes it's just you are who you are when you put the gloves on, and the guy's a striker. And he is dangerous. His record does not lie about that. And of course, like I mentioned, Bukauskas has been knocked out a few times against Jimmy Crute and Johnny Redmond, the same punch, I believe, and against Vitor Petrino last year. And I'm going to give him a little forgiveness on that Khalil Roundtree stabbing kick to his knee, because I don't think that's possible for anybody else. But his chin has failed him a few times, and Cerqueira, he's bona fide dangerous. Again, your record can't really find a way to lie about that after so many fights. So yeah, that might be a prop I'd consider playing, wasting some money on, to be honest, just because Cerqueira is a sizable underdog. But the pick is definitely Bukauskas winning, and I've got him pulling away down the stretch. Whether he's able to close the show in round 3 or just win a decision, I do think he's going to be the cleaner and more comfortable fighter over the course of 15 minutes, and especially in the second half. Bukauskas, he is much more of a knockout guy than a submission guy. And of course, Ibo Aslan did knock out Rafael Cerqueira. So I am predicting he wins by TKO. But like I said, nothing would surprise me, even if he was able to win a decision. And it's not like I've seen Rafael Cerqueira lose too many times where I can tell you definitively it's going to be a knockout. Like I can almost do with Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. Sorry about that one, by the way. But anyway, I am picking Bukauskas to win. I've got him winning by round 3 for some stupid fucking reason. And the basis for the prediction is that I trust him more. And the bet on Bukauskas is non-existent. I just can't trust him at 3-1 odds. Okay, next up we have Eric McConico making his UFC debut against Nursultan Ruziboev. My prediction here is Ruziboev wins, and I've got him winning by knockout. And the basis for the prediction is that he's the younger, longer, taller fighter with a lot more experience, who I think is a little more durable, in addition to being pretty fucking dangerous. So that's the basis for the prediction. All that shit I just said. That and the fact that McConico, in his 9-2 record, he's got both of those losses being by knockout. So plug all that shit in, and you get my prediction. McConico is close to in full camp for this fight, or in great shape. I know he had a fight scheduled sometime in February, so it's not like he's stepping off the couch, although it remains to be seen how these guys weigh in and whatever. But yeah, he's theoretically in shape, and I think he's theoretically stronger than Ruziboev, and will be trying to make this a more physical fight on the inside and out grapple him. And I do think maybe he can put it together for a round, but I don't think he can sustain that for 3 rounds and be the guy that Joaquin Buckley was. I think Ruziboev is going to go through him, whether he gets him tired or not. My actual prediction is it happens in round 1, kind of like when he knocked out Bruno Fajeda last year, 2 years ago, whatever. That was pretty damn quick. And that's the fight I envision, where it's just the height and the reach all combined, and he has a hard time cornering him, and he ends up getting clipped. But whatever, if I'm wrong and there is grappling and McConico gets in his face, that could make things interesting, but I still would pick Ruziboev to tame him, slow him down, stop getting taken down, and to piece him up on the feet down the stretch and get a knockout. McConico, he's just not that experienced. Again, yeah, 9-2 record. Both those losses take place 5 years ago in 2019. And since then, he's been on a 5-fight winning streak. He's beaten some decent fighters. He got a nice round 3 head kick over Maki Pitolo. Round 3 Maki Pitolo loss. That makes sense. He actually almost had him out of there in round 2, but Pitolo survived. But yeah, in general, I just can't trust this guy. Not that Ruziboev is the most proven UFC fighter, but he certainly belongs. And I don't think McConico is going to be able to pass this test. And I think Ruziboev clips him. I've got him clipping him early. I've got Ruziboev by knockout. Next up, we have Ricky Simón versus Javid Basharat. My prediction here is Javid Basharat wins. I wish I could pick Ricky Simón. And I feel like I would have been picking Ricky Simón just a few fights ago, just a year ago. But here we are a year later, and I've lost my faith in Ricky Simón. I've lost faith in his wrestling, and I never had too much faith in his striking. But I do think here, yeah, his striking is up against it, against Javid Basharat. I think Ricky Simón needs his wrestling to win this fight. And that's just something I don't trust to be there. But yeah, on the feet, where I envision this fight, I think Javid Basharat's going to be too difficult to keep up with. Basharat, not that he's Mr. Firepower or whatever. I don't think he'll be going knocking out Simón. The prediction is Basharat wins a decision. But I still envision him winning a clean decision on the feet. Basharat's one loss came in his last fight. Can't believe he hasn't fought since then. I know he had at least one scheduled. But his loss was to Amin Zahabi. And that was a close enough fight, but Amin Zahabi definitely landed the better shots, was really countering well, hurt him briefly, and just in general took over the fight in the second half and won a decision. But that's his only loss. His other 14, 15 fights are all wins. He had the no contest against Victor Henry. Javid Basharat, up until he got to the UFC, was a bona fide finisher. He never went to a decision up until he came to the UFC, and then it's pretty much been all decisions. But he's still beaten some good fighters. Trevin Jones, who is tricky and deceptively good. Then he beat Tony Gravely and Mateus Mendonça. And I envision this one being like a Tony Gravely type of fight. And yeah, the Victor Henry fight, I thought he was ahead, but he kicked him in the balls. So that's what happened. But yeah, I do think On the feet, Ricky Simone, he can bring maybe the more powerful punch for punch, the overhand or whatever, but I think technically he's too slow for Javid Basharat. And I don't think he's going to be able to get in his face easily. I think Javid Basharat is going to stop him from getting cornered and certainly getting pinned and taken down. And on the feet, he's got too much to offer for Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone is the guy who I've got less trust in his chin, but despite all the early finishes for Basharat in the UFC, he hasn't been so dangerous. And I'm picking Ricky Simone to stand up to the whatever danger Javid Basharat brings. Ricky Simone, despite being knocked out a few times, he still looked really fucking tough in most of his losses. Even the finish losses, aside from that Uriah Faber loss, I guess. Not that that was the best stoppage. But yeah, Ricky Simone, if he's really put his foot on the gas in the wrestling and he's been resharpening his wrestling, this could be a really interesting fight. But I'm basing my prediction on the premise that his wrestling is no longer the threat that it once was when he came into the UFC, and it's not going to be a threat for Javid Basharat. So Basharat by decision is the pick. I haven't bet on his money line, and I'll wait to see the props. Next up, we have Mansur Malik versus Nick Klein, where I'm picking this asshole, but I'm betting on this asshole because I'm the asshole. What'd you think about the little twist at the end there? Anyway, my prediction is Malik wins, and I'll go with him winning by round one destruction. Whatever. And maybe I'll try to find a way to cover that with a bet. I haven't seen the over-under or the props. But I know once the props drop, I will be wasting sprinkles on Nick Klein winning down the stretch. Rounds 2 and 3. Even though he just won his last fight by rear naked choke in 12 seconds. So maybe I should probably try to cover that with a prop as well. A submission flat. But in general, the bets that I'm looking to place are not bets on Nick Klein and his 7 fights. They're bets against Malik with his 7 fights. Because the guy has looked phenomenal, but they're all round 1 finishes, and just one fight has gone into round 2. And even though he looked good closing the show there was still a brief moment where it looked like he took a deep breath or something. I don't know. And in general, I'm just looking to see what this guy looks like in a competitive fight down the stretch. It's a question he's got to answer. It's not his fault that he hasn't answered it, but it's not his fault that I'm betting on fucking Nick Klein either. So there's that. But yeah, he's got to answer those questions for me to have trust in him, and I just don't have that trust in him. And I know it's all a speculation and a long shot and whatever, and it's how Nick Klein sees things. I've heard him say he's going to try to drag Malik into deep waters and drown him down the stretch. That's got to be the plan because I don't think anybody's going to have an easy time going through Mansur Malik in round 1. The guy's a fucking beast. First of all, he's exceptionally dangerous. And when he's firing on all cylinders, he's a pretty tough athlete to conquer. So I don't envision Nick Klein having any success in the first 20 seconds like he did in his last fight where, again, he got a nice rear naked choke, lightning quick on the Contender Series to get into the UFC. And I think he was a big underdog as well, I think. But yeah, Nick Klein, he is the more proven fighter despite having the same amount of fights and having a loss. He is a guy that's been 15 minutes, and he's also been able to close the show in round 3 over Colin Huckbody, getting a rear naked choke over that guy. That's a solid fighter outside of the UFC, a really good fighter, and he was able to force a stoppage, even though he was about to win a decision. He also beat this guy Tristan Overvig by decision, who I know I've seen Tristan beat somebody on this card on the amateur scene. But regardless, there's not a wealth of experience to look to with Nick Klein. It's not like he's the most proven commodity. And of course, one of the times he's been to round 3 was when he lost. He got TKO'd as a pro from the back mount against this guy Dorhan, I think. But it was in round 3. He had slowed down. He started to lose the physical battle, and he was being taken down. And I thought he could have been finished in round 2, but he ended up getting finished in round 3, I believe. I don't know. Either way, that's his one loss as a pro, and he also lost as an amateur from this guy Niall Bartling, who's also a good fighter as a pro, and Niall TKO'd him from the back mount as well, although that was in round 1 of an amateur fight. So a little different there, but still, he lost the physicality battle, lost the wrestling battle, and ended up getting flattened out and TKO'd. I don't think Mansur Abdul-Malik is going to flatten him out. If you want my prediction, I don't think there's going to be a takedown for Mansur Abdul-Malik. I think he wins straight up on the feet and is just too tough to corner, too fast to catch, and I think too dangerous to survive. And I've got him winning by knockout in round 1, kind of like he did with Dusko Todorovic. Where he, really showed some excellent aggression and some awesome moments, pouncing on Dusko. And yeah, I think gun to my head with no odds, Mansur Abdul-Malik should win this fight. I think Nick Klein is going to have a hard time going through him athletically, catching him in the first place, and he's going to be way too behind on the feet. Nick Klein leaves a lot to be desired on the feet. The guy's got some good traits as a fighter, but, I haven't seen his chin pass too many tests yet, and I'm predicting it doesn't pass this one. I think Mansur Abdul-Malik is just going to be too much for him physically. So yeah, the prediction is Mansur Abdul-Malik wins. I've got him winning by round 1, whatever the fuck. And I doubt I'll bet on that because he's such a big favorite. But on the flip side, Nick Klein is a gigantic underdog, and he's fighting somebody who, much like him, has 7 fights. So I will go reaching for props, not with serious money, mostly because I don't have serious money. I'm a nickel and dime jerk off. But even in my little nickel and dime world, nothing too serious. But yeah, a few sprinkles on Nick Klein. Next up, we have Melk Costa taking on Andre Fili. My prediction for this fight is Andre Fili wins by decision. And the basis for the prediction is that even though the mileage and the age is starting to add up for Andre Fili, I still think he's close enough to his physical prime here. And I do think my main doubt in him, his chin, is really not a concern in this matchup. I'd be surprised if he was finished. And in a fight that I do expect to go the distance and to largely be contested on the feet, I've got to give the edge to Andre Fili, who I think is a little quicker than Melk Costa. Fili moves and strikes well. Costa, he's definitely more of a versatile fighter. Certainly when you look at his record, he's got a total mixed bag there. 21 victories. He's got 7 by submission, 7 by knockout, and 7 by decision. True jack of all trades. Although when you look at his losses, they're also mixed pretty evenly. So maybe he's the jack off of all trades. But I do think he's the more willing grappler here between the two. And there may be some points to be scored there, but I'd be really surprised if he was able to finish Andre Fili on the ground. Fili's been submitted a few times, but I think he should pass the Melk Costa test, even though Melk got a nice submission victory in his last one over Shailon Nurbandeke. I nailed that fucking name. But regardless, I've heard an interview with Melk Costa. Not that that means anything, but he did say he's looking forward to a striking battle with Andre Fili. And I do think in general, even if they try to mix things up, because both guys can score points on the ground, they're both willing grapplers here and there. But I think even though Melk is the more willing grappler, I don't think either guy is going to be able to turn this into a grappling match. I think takedown defense will prevail, and I think this is going to be a striking battle. And in a striking battle, despite the age and the mileage and all the horse shit adding up and the knockout losses, I still think Andre Fili is the faster man. And I got him racking up more points with sharper strikes and better movement. But yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my doubt in his chin, because it's the biggest doubt in Andre Fili. He's now approaching 35 years old, and he's been knocked out recently against Dan Ige and against Joe Anderson Brito. Not to mention on Yair Rodriguez with his jumping switch kick years back, and whatever else there was. But yeah, there's definitely been some moments with Andre Fili, and I do think moving forward it'll be a concern. But in this matchup, I don't think Melk Costa brings near the danger of those guys I mentioned, and I don't think Fili's chin is under such a big threat here. And from there, moving forward, yeah, I think this is an Andre Fili fight. So I'm going with Andre Fili winning. I've got him winning by decision, and I have bet on him. He's now a slight underdog, even though I bet on him as a slight favorite because I'm a jerk off. But regardless, at toss up odds, you go with who you want, who you think is going to win, and I'm going with Andre Fili. So yeah, I bet on Andre Fili. Next up, we have Ibo Aslan taking on Iwan Kutalaba. My prediction for this fight is Iwan Kutalaba wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by round 3 finish. Even though I feel like if he loses, it's going to be a round 1 finish because they're both fucking monsters. But I've got to go with Iwan Kutalaba winning because even though his record looks like shit compared to Ibo Aslan, and even though he's the smaller, less physical man, I still think Iwan Kutalaba, with his experience and his skill set, he can make this a tough fight for Ibo Aslan by A, taking him down, and B, dragging him into deep waters. Not that he needs both A and B, but certainly both of those would work really well, I think, against Ibo Aslan. But even if he's not able to take him down, I think dragging him into deep waters would be in it. If these guys go, a long fight, if they go into deep waters, it's going to be a violent fucking fight. And I think Iwan Kutalaba, despite having been finished a bunch, because he's fighting at a high level for a while now, I think he's the guy that's better equipped to win that long type of grueling fight. He's an underdog, so yeah, I'll bet on him, and maybe I'll go reaching for props with a few sprinkles, but it's not my most serious prediction. I do think Ibo Aslan could be a bad matchup for Iwan Kutalaba, just because they're both these seek and destroy fighters, but one of them's a little bigger and a little more dangerous, perhaps. Ibo Aslan's got 14 victories. He's got 14 knockouts. A few of them are in round 3 now. After that second round 3 victory he got over Anton Turkali, which was a great fucking look. Not only because he got a round 3 finish, but because he got a round 3 finish over the one guy to beat him after he collapsed in round 2 of their first fight. So that was a great look, but he also got a nice round 3 finish over Robert Valentin, who was on The Ultimate Fighter last season. Fucking weirdo Yuri Prohach kind of guy. But still, most of his victories are him steamrolling his opponents in round 1. Kind of like he did to Rafael Cerqueira in 51 seconds. And I do think, of course, if he does win, that's how it's going to look against Iwan Kutalaba. Kutalaba's been knocked out a few times. Kennedy and Nzechukwu got him in round 2 with the flying knee, and he got knocked out once and a half, maybe twice, by Magomed Ankalaev, depending on what your take was on their first fight, which, he was playing some games for sure. But still, Iwan Kutalaba, even without the level of opposition, I do have to look and say he looks like the more vulnerable guy, at least his chin. And he's got to worry about it here against Ibo. But I think if he doesn't get knocked out early, Iwan Kutalaba's got more skills that carry him to a victory. And secondly, he's got a good chance of knocking Ibo Aslan out on the feet as well. It's not like Iwan Kutalaba can't throw down. He's a fucking savage himself. The guy's green, like the Hulk. But I'm looking at a picture of him and he's green on Sherdog right now. So I don't want you to think I'm saying, yeah, the guy's green. No, if somebody's green, it's Ibo Aslan. That's the guy who's green. He's got to be tested in a lot of ways. And I think Iwan Kutalaba, if he's able to take him down in the first place, and if he's able to drag him into deep waters in the second place, and especially do both of those together, I think he will win this fight. And I will go with him winning. I'll go with him winning by round 3 finish because, I don't know. That'd be nice to watch, I guess. Next up, we have Julius Walker taking on Alonzo Menifield. My prediction here is Menifield wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision for some reason. Maybe a late knockout would make more sense, but I'll go with decision. And the basis for the prediction is that Julius Walker seems really talented, but I think he's going to be up against it physically. This guy is a grappler first, and I think he's going to have a hard time getting Alonzo Menifield down in the first place and then controlling him. And on the feet, I think he's going to be a half step behind, certainly as the fight goes on. Menifield is probably always going to bring that danger, where he's always going to have that threat there, especially in round 1, I guess. But I think as this fight goes on, Menifield's just going to be more comfortable there, and Julius Walker will not be. I think Julius Walker is much more reliant on a grappling fight and really getting on top of his opponent. And the guy is dangerous. The guy's slick down there. He's gotten some good wins already, but I think this is going to be one of those next level situations. Alonzo Menifield, his biggest liability is his chin. He's been knocked out a few times and somewhat recently as well. And of course, he's no spring chicken. He's an older guy too. But I still think he's safe here from Julius Walker, despite Walker being the longer, taller guy and whatever. I think Alonzo Menifield doesn't have to worry about the knockout threat from Julius Walker like he has UFC opponents. And I think his striking will shine once he realizes he's safe there. And of course, on the flip side, Alonzo Menifield is always dangerous because he's built like a fucking tank, and tanks can destroy people. So, yeah, him winning a fight. I've got him winning by decision, but him winning by finish certainly wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, Julius Walker, he's the newcomer. He's 6-0. He's got 4 TKO victories and just 2 submissions in his his pro MMA career. But he's definitely more of a grappler. The guy's got a lot to offer on the ground. And he did get a nice triangle armbar in round 2 over Niall Bartling, who I mentioned before. I think he TKO'd Nick Klein. Niall Bartling's a solid professional, and yeah, he submitted him, Julius Walker, with a triangle armbar. He also beat Bevon Lewis, former UFC fighter, in his next fight. TKO'd him in round 1 on the ground. And after that, Myron Dennis, another guy who's been hovering around the UFC for a while. So he's not your average 6-0 fighter. He's gotten some good victories already, and he's definitely impressed. But I think this is going to be that next level type of fight where he's not able to go through Menifield physically, and he's not able to get the fight that he wants. And I think Alonzo Menifield, despite looking not so great lately in the UFC, I still think he's a problem for any fighter who isn't truly well-rounded. And I think Alonzo Menifield will grow in comfort as this 15-minute fight goes on. And of course, I think his power will still be there for him. And I think he'll be physically and striking-wise bullying Julius Walker for the second half of this fight. So I've got Alonzo Menifield winning. I picked decision for some stupid fucking reason. But yeah, I have comfortably bet on him already because he was inside 2-1 odds. Now he's about 2-1, a little over. But yeah, still pretty tight. Next up, we have Melsik Bagdasaryan taking on Jean Silva. My prediction for this fight is Melsik Bagdasaryan wins, and I've got him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is the betting odds. Now, all right, I'm going with Melsik anyway. I've got Melsik winning by decision because fuck it. I think he's going to be given a favorable fight here in Jean Silva, the striker. I do think Jean Silva's got more to offer than Melsik does on the ground. And he does have 2 nice guillotine victories. And of course, he's training with a phenomenal team. But I still think he is a striker at heart. And even though he's got more to offer maybe than most fighters compared to Melsik, they're fighting each other. And I think he's going to run into a faster striker here. and this is just going to be a tough matchup for him. Melsik Bagdasaryan, he's been defeated twice, as has Jean Silva. Melsik's losses are both by submission. He lost in his debut, which whatever the fuck, and he lost in the UFC against Joshua Kulabau, or Josh Kulabau, where Kulabau just out of nowhere turned the corner, took his back, took his neck really, and choked him out, lightning quick in a fight where Melsik was comfortably ahead. And here, look, that could certainly happen. I do think Melsik Bagdasaryan still hasn't patched up all those holes. I think he's very submittable. And it's not like Joshua Kulabau is Mr. Submission Artist himself. But I'd be surprised if Jean Silva was able to submit Melsik Bagdasaryan. I just see him as more of a violent destroyer. And I don't think he's going to be able to violently destroy Melsik Bagdasaryan either. I think he may certainly hit harder, and I think he may be trying to chop down Melsik and slow down his movement. But I think Melsik will still be faster. He'll be tough to reach and chop down in the first place. And I have no doubts in the chin or health of Melsik Bagdasaryan as far as standing up to the striking in MMA goes. I think he can handle himself. And I think this is just going to prove to be a difficult matchup for Jean Silva. He's not exactly Shara Bullet, and Melsik Bagdasaryan isn't exactly Michael Venom Page, but something in that realm is how I see this fight. And certainly if I was picking Jean Silva, I'd be here I'm telling you, this is a lot fucking closer than the odds say it is. And it certainly is. Melsik Bagdasaryan, I'm not saying he's automatically going to make this close, even in defeat, because Jean Silva is such a fucking killer that if he defeats you, he probably finishes you. So chances are, if Jean Silva wins, it looks lopsided in one way or another, ultimately. But I do think, again, I trust the health and the chin of Melsik Bagdasaryan. I also trust his movement. I think he's going to be the faster guy on the feet with Jean Silva, who's going to be trying to slow him down in one way or another. And Melsik has proven to be a good 15-minute scrapper. He's a guy that's got good cardio. He doesn't have a wealth of MMA experience, but he's certainly been around the UFC for a lot longer than Jean Silva, despite Jean having a lot more MMA experience under his belt. But yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Jean Silva has the brighter future. I think Jean Silva, if you were to give these guys 10 fighters to fight each, whoever they are, I think Jean Silva does better against them. But you put these guys against each other, and I think he's got a difficult matchup in Melsik Bagdasaryan. So I've got Melsik Bagdasaryan winning a kickboxing bout by decision. And you bet your ass I've already bet on him. Next up, we have Rob Font versus Jean Matsumoto. My prediction for this fight is Font wins, and I've got him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is that he's done this before. I think he's going to play spoiler here. He is an underdog as well, which actually surprised me. I still think Jean Matsumoto has an incredibly bright future, and he's certainly got a shot at winning this fight, which would be really impressive. I mean, the guy's looked phenomenal in the UFC so far. He had a close fight with Brad Katona, and I did pick Brad to win that fight, but he still won that fight. And Brad Katona, as close as the fight is, Brad Katona is a fucking two-time Ultimate Fighter. So that is an excellent victory. And his win over Dan Argueta, it may not be as great on paper, but being able to put that guy away down the stretch at the end of round 2, like he did with that guillotine, I thought that was phenomenal. I think Dan Argueta's really fucking tough. And I think Jean Matsumoto is a problem. And the guy's awesome. And he's got a very pretty record of 16-0. But I still think this is one of those next level type of situations. I think he will get in Rob Font's face and probably get in on his hips and take him down. I'm assuming that's what he's trying to do. But I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that for 15 minutes. And Rob Font, I think, is going to be too much for him on the feet, especially down the stretch. I think if Rob Font gets him a little tired, stuffs those takedowns, Rob Font's boxing will carry him to a victory. I think Brad Katona's got excellent boxing too, but Rob Font's got boxing with that extra bit of power and, of course, a jab from hell to set it all up. And I think he'll be the one dictating the fight on the feet. Rob Font got a great win in his last fight over Kyler Phillips. He came through as a big underdog. Kyler Phillips was riding really high, and it's not the first time Rob Font shut down a newcomer. We all remember Adrian Yanez, and I believe his last victory, a few fights before that, Yanez had a lot of momentum, just like Phillips. And that time it was the power of Rob Font that shut that all down, where he got him out of there in round one. And of course, that can happen too. I've never seen Jean Matsumoto lose, so I can't tell you what it'll look like. But I've seen him hurt. He's been hurt plenty of times and tired and put in bad spots. And the guy's had an answer for everything, which is great for a 16-0 fighter. And it's probably what gives him confidence here going up against somebody like Rob Font. But I still have to go with Rob Font here. Even though Jean Matsumoto's answered every question and looked phenomenal, this is a big step up, even from Brad Katona. This is a big step up in Rob Font. And even at 37 years old or whatever the fuck he's at right now, Rob Font, he's still firing on all cylinders, taking out, contenders like Kyler Phillips. And I think here against Jean Matsumoto, he might concede a takedown or so, but I don't think he's going to concede more than that. And on the feet, I think his hands will be too sharp. So Rob Font by decision is the pick for some reason because I am a dumbass. And I have bet on him, but not too much because even though he's an underdog and I think the odds should be reversed, I think Jean Matsumoto is a pretty scary prospect and he's not some 7-0 fighter. This guy's been tested a lot more with 16 victories and a lot of good ones outside the UFC. So we'll see how he looks here. Next up in the co-main event of the evening, we have Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on Brendan Allen in a rematch from 7 or 8 years ago in the LFA. My prediction for this fight is Anthony Fluffy Hernandez wins a decision. But I'm not too confident in that prediction because it's only a 3-round fight. I would be more confident in Fluffy if it was a 5-round fight, although I might be less confident in the whole decision part. But here in 3 rounds, I think Brendan Allen is the better striker, first of all. I think he's the better technical striker and also the more dangerous striker. And I also think Brendan Allen is the physically stronger man, which could certainly help. And I also think Brendan Allen is the better top game grappler than just about anybody. Fluffy is fucking amazing on top. He's certainly a contender, but I don't think Fluffy is going to be advancing on Brendan Allen if he gets him down. I think Brendan will be shutting down the advances of Fluffy. Whereas if Brendan was able to get on top of Fluffy, I think Brendan would advance on him like he would anyone else and get a dominant position. Maybe it'd be worth betting on draw for this one. But yeah, I do have to go with Fluffy winning because even though he's less physical and I think maybe less skilled on top, he's fucking relentless on top and he's still very fucking skilled. But it's really that relentless part where he'll get in Brendan Allen's face and he'll give himself a million shots at getting him to the ground and he'll keep doing it. Even if Brendan keeps getting up, Fluffy's relentless. That won't have a chance to shine like it would in a 5-round fight, but I still think it'll carry him to a victory in a 3-round fight. So that is the prediction. Fluffy Hernandez by decision. But as far as liabilities go, the biggest liability that I can find in this fight would be the body of Fluffy Hernandez. It's been responsible for his losses. Kevin Holland TKO'd him with a body shot, and Marcus Perez submitted him with a body shot pretty much. And of course, in his last fight against Michel Pereira, it was the body shot that almost got him out of there early. He seemed pretty fucking hurt before he wasn't, and then kicked Michel's ass for 20 minutes. So there's that. And yeah, he looked awesome in that fight in general. But yeah, the body shot is the weakness of Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. And Brendan Allen, he may not be as quick as somebody like Kevin Holland, but he hits really fucking hard and he's got some excellent body kicks. So hopefully he and his team have paid attention to that. But yeah, I think Brendan Allen, it's tempting for me to bet on him, even though I'm picking against him here. This is one where the odds are staring at me. He's a 5-2 underdog. And of course, I think he's the better striker on the feet, but He only needs one takedown, and he's pretty much won that round. I think if Brendan Allen gets on top of Fluffy, he's won that round. He will advance on Fluffy, too, and give himself a shot at winning a 10-8. Again, maybe I'll think about that draw. So yeah, the pick has to be Fluffy just because, even a 3-round fight, as short as it is, it's still kind of long. And I think Fluffy, with all of his traits, will carry him to a victory. I think he's the one that out hustles Brendan here. That's how Brendan lost against Nasruddin Imavov. He had a really strong round one, or a kind of strong round one, where he wasn't able to advance as much as he needed to. But he still won round one comfortably and then fell off. And here, I kind of envision a similar type of fight. I do think Brendan Allen has a lot going for him, a lot of advantages here, and they could be there for him early. But I have to go in general with Fluffy winning this fight, pulling away by being Fluffy Hernandez, just bringing too much pressure and too much of a pace, where in the end, he's the one who's shining. So yeah, Fluffy Hernandez is the pick, and the bet, if there is one, will almost assuredly be going the other way. Next up, we have Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong in the main event of the evening. As much as I'd love to pick Triple C, I've got to go with Song Yadong winning here. And I'm going to go with him winning by a late stoppage. Not that the ref stopped it late, but, it happened in round 4 or 5. I'll go with round 4. Fuck it. But the basis for the prediction is that Song Yadong is younger, healthier, longer, taller, and I think he also hits harder, even though Henry hits really fucking hard, punch for punch. And also, the other half of the prediction is that I think Henry Cejudo's wrestling is not going to be there for him for 25 minutes like it needs to be. I think Henry would need to make his wrestling much more of a factor to win this fight, and I don't think it's going to be such a big factor. I think it might be a factor early on, but I'd be surprised if he was able to thoroughly out-wrestle Song Yadong, which doesn't mean 25 minutes of control time, but it means hitting those takedowns down the stretch as well. And I guess I'm basing this off of his losses to Aljamain and Merab, who are monsters and excellent grapplers and the exact opposite type of fighter of Song Yadong. But still, as good as they are and as whatever as they are, I still look at it as a sign of Henry's wrestling slowing down a bit. Also, he's approaching 40. So yeah, I think on the feet he's going to be a half step behind, certainly, and definitely in the second half of this fight. But look, Henry on the feet, he hits really fucking hard, and he's knocked out a bunch of legends and champions and Hall of Famers himself, so I certainly respect what he can do on the feet. And Song Yadong has been knocked out. I'm not talking about the Corey Sandhagen fight. I'm talking about this other guy, Papadunikov or something. Either way, he was knocked out like 10 years ago when he was probably 12 years old or whatever. But still, I don't think Henry's going to be able to close the show there. It can happen, but I would be surprised. And on the feet, it's not like Henry is totally lost in the points battle. He's got excellent fucking low kicks, and that could turn out to be the whole story of the striking. But again, I'd be surprised there. I think Song Yadong is too sophisticated of a striker, and I think he is too dangerous and too hard hitting for Henry to get the better of him throughout 25 minutes on the feet. Not to mention, again, Song Yadong is the longer, taller, younger guy, and he's pretty fucking fast. So I think the fight, no matter what happens, it'll be interesting early. But in the second half of the fight, I think Song Yadong will be able to keep the fight standing, first of all, and I think his striking will carry him to a victory. And I've got him being the second guy to finish Henry Cejudo. Cejudo's only ever been finished once, and it was against Mighty Mouse at UFC 197. And Mighty Mouse was just too seasoned for him. Henry got caught in the clinch, got beaten up, and was taken out. But that's the only time. And, he's looked rock solid ever since. But now, being 37, 38 years old, and fighting a young kid who's now accustomed to fighting 25 hard minutes in the UFC, I've got Song definitely being the better man down the stretch, certainly on the feet. And gun to my head, I've got him producing a finish. May not be the most emphatic finish, but a finish, kind of like he did with Ricky Simone last year, whenever that was. So yeah, Song Yadong by TKO is the prediction. And I have not bet on him as money line. I haven't bet on it yet. Maybe I'll reach for some props or some bullshit. Not that I'm married to round 4, but in general, I think he pulls away in the second half of this fight. So maybe I'll sprinkle some shit down the stretch. But I'd love to see Henry Cejudo win this fight and say something really fucking cringy on the microphone. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.